Hello, welcome to this second module of the course about intercultural competencies and ICT. And in this section, I will talk about the development of intercultural competencies in general and specifically in online environments. And first, some ideas about the development of intercultural competencies, and some of them I recollect them from the previous module about the intercultural competencies framework, are and that we have to bear in mind as the basics, is that intercultural competencies are composed by knowledge, skills and attitudes, but the attitudes are the basis for intercultural competencies. They are the most important, I would say. And also another important thing, and this is common to other competencies, the development and the learning of intercultural competencies is a lifelong learning process, so it's never-ending process. We will always develop more knowledge about others, about ourselves in an intercultural sense. We can develop better skills, we can develop better attitudes, so it's a never-ending process. And coming to the curriculum and to the courses or the educational experiences, the development of intercultural competencies needs to be addressed from the curriculum itself and from experiential learning. And it includes reflective practice and interaction with other people who are diverse, as we are, all of us are diverse. So interaction, you have them here, interaction, reflection and diversity are key words in the development of intercultural competencies. And for structuring this section, I have divided my guidelines or my suggestions in 3 sections: methodologies or methodological guidelines, some resources, and some technologies or IC tools that can help us in this process. But first, it's important, and I have put an alert here. There are some methodological dilemmas or dichotomies, and we have to position ourselves in one of those extremes of somewhere in between. First dilemma is for developing intercultural competencies is if we hold an intercultural approach in education versus or opposite to specific training in intercultural education, or if we translate it into a cross-disciplinary context, if we want to develop these intercultural competencies and we have it in our mind in any educational experience we design, or if we want to have specific activities or specific debates or specific actions, very not regular nor continuously but punctually about intercultural competencies. I advance that my position is always in the first option. That's my aspiration in the Teach I do. Of course, we are always working or in an educational center or an institution with circumstances, but if I have to choose, I would prefer an intercultural approach in education and not a specific training, decontextualized training about intercultural competencies. Second dilemma is the learning in real context and networks versus individual or group training. It's also related to the first dilemma. So learning in real context would mean, for instance, if we are doing professional development with teachers, as could be the case with this course, that is the expected audience is teachers, that would be more in the individual or group training part, the second option, because it's not contextualized in your real context to solve your real concerns or problems in your situation. But we can try to convert it and to make you reflect or how to do this in your real context, to try to create a network with other learners in this course. So you see, they are different perspectives, and the first one is more complete and more effective for the development of intercultural competencies. And finally, and this is very important, not only about intercultural competencies, but for any teacher education in general, if we want to promote the review of beliefs and practices versus the training in techniques and methods. The idea of the professional that relies behind the review of beliefs and practices is that teachers are professional, reflective people, reflective practitioners. And the other one is more like some training on specific methods of or techniques with specific problems, decontextualize, and not so linked to promoting awareness and real reflection on teachers. So again, I will position myself and this course in trying to review beliefs and practices that we as teachers develop. So having said these alerts, some methodological proposals or guidelines that we have to bear in mind as teachers when trying to promote intercultural competencies in our context is, again, diversity as normality. We are all diverse. It's not an exception that someone is diverse, but all of us. That's a shift in the way of thinking about cultural diversity. Also, to believe in the power of education as a means or as a way for developing intercultural competencies to live in diverse societies. Also important, and given that the attitude, as we said before, is a main component of intercultural competencies, the development of a critical attitude and awareness of our own attitudes about diversity is main methodological guideline. Also, I won't read them all, but to normalize the existence of conflicts and to try to learn how to deal with them from with the intercultural competencies as a frame. And also the cultural relativism as a means or as a tool to analyze and to approach diversity. This is opposite to judging diversity from our own view. It's very related to empathy as a competence. Also, and this is also very important, when we talk about diversity, another aspect that should go linked to it, it's equity, because we are diverse, but we are equal at the same time. If we focus too much on diversity without acknowledging or addressing the idea that inequality exists, and that diversity and some types of diversity are discriminated or there are a lot of prejudices and stereotypes about it, we will miss a very important part of intercultural education, which is the equity. Diversity and equity should go together. So we have to fight against discrimination, racism, and I will show you a resource specific about this later. Also, it's important as teachers to adapt the curriculum considering learner's perspective and promoting cooperation and collaborative learning. I will show you also some examples later. Another methodological guideline is the development of communication competencies, group work, cooperation, and social interaction. Interaction is in the basis of the intercultural competencies, so it implies communicating, relating to others, working together, doing teamwork. So we have to promote this type of activities and environments in our teaching design. And also another important aspect is the value and to assess or to consider the learning process on itself and not only the final performance or the cognitive knowledge about something. This is something quite common that we could say not only related to intercultural competencies to any teaching experience. The value of the learning process in itself. Trying to go a bit further or be more specific about the teaching demands when we want to address intercultural competencies in our courses. We have to promote and practice ourselves a reflective practice. It's very important to create the conditions for the development of intercultural competencies. And it was Paulo Freire who said that education is about creating rich educational experiences for learning. And this is the same idea. The conditions where learning happens, and this has to do with the take care of the rapport, the climate in the course. The environment we create, the context of the interaction is very important for the development of intercultural competencies. Also, as teachers, despite we can have some constraints or institutional requirements or the compulsory curriculum or competencies we have to develop, we still have some space for making decisions about content and methodology in the courses. It varies depending on the educational level. It's not the same at the university or at secondary education, but we always have as teachers some room, some space for making decisions. And it's important also try to involve learners in that decisions. And one key that you will find always when talking about intercultural education is flexibility. In a very wide sense, flexibility with the type of activities, with the type of content. So this would be some guidelines about the methodologies, on the methodological strategies we can use when trying to teach intercultural competencies. But what happens in the online environments? Because these guidelines are valid and useful for any educational context, but what happens in online environments? Can we develop these competencies and these methodological guidelines in online environments, which are characterized by a non-face-to-face relation with the learners that could be spread in any place in the world or in a region, that are usually quite structured to some extent in the timing, in the type of activities. So is it possible to do this in online environments? Well, I will say yes, all of them. We can, as any other teacher, I teach online, of course, distance education. We can do a reflective practice. We can create conditions for the development of ICT. We can take care of the rapport or the climate in the course we teach. We can decide on the content and methodologies to some extent. We are not so autonomous 100%, but we can do some decisions. We can involve learners in the curriculum, and we can be flexible. It's not 100% open thing, some flexibility, because, and especially as I said before, the online courses are maybe more structured than face-to-face courses where improvisation can happen quite easily or more easily. But still, despite this alert, we can work all this or put in place all these guidelines also in online environments. So now I will move to resources. And here I would like first to make a distinction, because we can have two different situations. One is that where we have to teach a course that deals specifically with diversity, cultural diversity, intercultural competencies, or racism, or something related. But most of you will probably teach any discipline, and this course is addressed just for you in the cross-disciplinary context. So you may not teach and talk in your courses specifically about intercultural competencies or culture or discrimination or diversity or equity. But still you can work with any resource and work the intercultural competencies. But if you are in the first situation that you have to to work specifically about intercultural competencies or intercultural education in your course, that's my case, for instance, I teach in a master about intercultural education, then there are some resources that we have curated or selected in the Colisée project, which is where this course is framed. It's a European project we have developed for 2 years. And we have made a selection of resources available at UNED in audio, video, or documents that somehow can help us to think and to work with intercultural competencies. And I will show you 2 of them. They are 2 resources I have been, I was involved in. They are also products of some research and cooperation projects. And the first one is, you have it here, is a guide for teachers, it was addressed to teachers in compulsory education, so primary and secondary education, but I'm sure you can find some ideas if you are teaching in other educational levels. And the book is available in Spanish and in English, and you will find it in the resources in the course. They are open access books. And second one, it's also a book addressed to teachers mainly, but it's specifically about racism, what it is racism and how to deal with it and how to teach about racism from, of course, an anti-racist perspective. You will also find this, the English book in the PDF in the course, in the resources section. And finally, after methodological guidelines and some resources specifically for teaching or talking about intercultural competencies, I would like to reflect a bit basics about technologies or tools that can help us in online environments to work with intercultural competencies. And I have differentiated 2 different environments. One is the learning management systems, like this course. In this course we are using a learning management system. It's Open edX, the platform for UNED MOOCs. In our regular courses at UNED, we use another learning management system, and we have different tools included in that platforms. And the other part would be other open online environments, not necessarily inside the platform, but in the internet in general, so more widely used tools that we can also take and bring to our courses. In the case of the platforms, one very important tool that we all have, also in this course, is the forum. And we can use it for interaction, for knowing each other, for promoting debates, for participation, for sharing opinions. And I will show you some examples in the next module about how I use that in my own courses. Also, another interesting tool that may be more for the teacher, because it's not so public information, it's the service tool that, at least in, well, we have that in our UNED platform for our regular graduate and postgraduate courses. We can get information about our students' profile, expectations, previous knowledge through those surveys. And this is very helpful if we want to design afterwards some type of activity, or if we want to make group learning. We know it previously who our students are, and we can facilitate the creation of groups, for instance. And in open online environments, we have many different tools, and this list will be bigger and bigger because there are new tools coming very quickly in the current moment we live in the world. But I think some useful tools for developing intercultural competencies, because they facilitate to work on some of the competencies I showed you before about in the intercultural competencies framework, are the collaborative documents, the wikis, or I don't want to say some trademarks, but the Google Drive or similar, where we can work together. Also blogs for debates, sharing opinions, interaction with others is important. Social networks for the same purpose. And more specifically, and not so widely extended tools, the deliberation tools. Some tools they specifically designed for participation, reaching consensus, discussing about topics, and I will show you an example in the next module. And also another interesting one is the e-portfolios, specifically for compiling all the students' learning process and their reflections and awareness about their own learning. This is a very powerful tool to develop the critical reflection in learners. So these are my suggestions. I expect you will contribute with your own suggestions about tools or whatever, about methodologies, resources or tools, and you can enrich this module in the course. Thank you for your attention.